this Division of Revenue Bill 2025, which is essentially a vertical share of our natural resources. And Madam Speaker, in this year, what has come from National Assembly is that we aim to have a budget of 2.7 trillion. And out of this budget, Madam Speaker, in a layman's language, the National Assembly is proposing that the national government gets 2.4 trillion out of this budget, which would represent 85.33% of the budget that we hope to raise in this next budget year, and then give counties 405 billion. To be specific, 405.069 billion. That, Madam Speaker, would represent 14.28% of the total budget that we hope to raise. Madam Speaker, I'm alive to the fact that sometimes ordinary revenue is not collected to what we hope to get, and therefore I empathize with that fact. However, Madam Speaker, the requirements of Article 203, Madam Speaker, is about equitable share of these national resources, Madam Speaker. And that equitable share, Madam Speaker, does require, therefore, that when sharing this revenue, then it behooves the National Treasury, which, Madam Speaker, I've said a time without number in this House, that I wish that the National Treasury was independent, to view the national government as different and county government as different, and then be a fair avenue for sharing resources. Because, Madam Speaker, it behooves the National Treasury to ask itself, is this sharing formula that's proposed here, the vertical share, equitable? And how will you know that it's equitable? Madam Speaker, the element of equity will come when you revisit Schedule 4 of the Constitution. Because Schedule 4 of the Constitution, Madam Speaker, does align resources to functions. And those functions, Madam Speaker, are clearly stipulated to the extent that they are national functions of government and they are county functions of governance. And Madam Speaker, time without number, that idea of equitable share is elusive to the country because we do not cost those functions. And Madam Speaker, when the CS for Finance showed up before the Finance Committee, me being a member there together with the previous speaker, the good senator from Kakamega, Senator Boni, although he likes seeing me as is more of his son's age mate than a legislator in this house, but he will remember that I told the CS that there are things that if you do, then you borderline underfunding counties, but there are those that if you do, then you are defunding counties. And I think that those two distinctions are still very elusive to the National Treasury. Because, Madam Speaker, the desire of this House, having looked at the stress that counties face with regards to the functions that counties have, and not just underfunded, but actually non-funded. They are findable, but they're not fundable by the national government, Madam Speaker. So the proposal that you give counties 405 billion, Madam Speaker, if you do the calculus, and I'll go through the calculus as fast as I can, you are actually defunding counties. And this is something that we will not take lightly, Madam Speaker, You remember the other day, Madam Speaker, on a lighter note, but on a very serious note, Madam Speaker was thrown out of this House for insisting that the CS for healthcare, for the health system in this country, Madam Speaker, should not tempt to take the payroll of universal healthcare workers to counties without following it with money. Should not even attempt, should not even dream of it. Because, Madam Speaker, for the last 2 years that we have been fighting about finance bill in this particular House, any money that is given to counties is money that is funding non-discretionary expenses. They are expenses that have emerged due to national government policy that puts constraint and stress on counties without following them with money. Madam Speaker, if you implement a policy, for instance, of housing levy deductions, it happens at the national level, and the employees of the counties also have to face the same. Yet the counties did not have that in their budget when devolution was taking root. Madam Speaker, that goes to about 4 billion that counties have to face. Madam Speaker, if you enact contributions that have bulged on National Social Security Fund, it affects the staffers of the counties. And when it affects them to a point of 3.7 billion, it was not catered for in the calculus before we got to where we are right now, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the national government, through the presidency, made a statement and a concession between them and the national and the county government that there's going to be a creation of county integrated industrial parks, commonly known as KIPES, Madam Speaker. This is a whooping 11 billion responsibilities on counties that then they must shoulder. Yet, it was not catered for in the calculus that then constituted money that goes to counties. And worse, it was not funded. The responsibility was given half to national government, half to county government, without knowing where county governments would get this. But because it's a commitment and projects are already going on, Madam Speaker, it goes without saying that then it has to be funded. Madam Speaker, we know the issue that we discussed in Turkana when we went to the county, to the Senate Mashinani in Turkana, the issue of community health promoters program. Madam Speaker, we held the view in this House that this is a primary health function that is purely devolved, and therefore it ought to have been funded and financed, first of all costed, then financed by national government, and then if it's a hallmark project, let counties deal with it. The national government chose that they will do a stipend of a half of it and let counties deal with the half of it. If you give counties money, because these people are already in their form of payroll, Madam Speaker, they have to be financed. Madam Speaker, we know very well of the outstanding issues around doctors' CBA. Counties have to face this burden if our healthcare system has to work. All this, Madam Speaker, we haven't talked about the wage drift that happens automatically in our system, where it has to be adjusted by about 5% every year that counties then have to finance. If you look at all that burden, it is a non-discretionary burden, meaning it is money that is already must be paid. You can't, there's no two ways about it. So, what does this number come to, Madam Speaker? Just to deal with those non-discretionary expenses in counties, Madam Speaker, it would mean that our counties will need up until 420 billion. So that is commensurate with that non-discretionary fund. For a bill to come from the National Assembly, Madam Speaker, that proposes that counties then must be given only 405 billion, is an abuse. It's an abuse to the system of devolution that has brought hope to this country. It's an abuse to the system of equity that is proposed under Article 204 or 203, because, Madam Speaker, counties will barely have even any money to do discretionary expenses. Among them, and the most important one, dealing with development in our counties. So this is something, Madam Speaker, that I think that we must stamp our foot on as Senate and insist on the calculus that we came up with that was giving counties, or proposing that in this financial year, regardless of the fiscal stress that the national government must have, counties must get 465 billion. They must. Because otherwise, Madam Speaker, you end up running counties that are barely running a cash flow business, where they're only paying for workers, but there's no development. No development ever gets done in counties, Madam Speaker. And when there's no development projects in counties, Madam Speaker, it goes without saying that there's no money circulation. There's no money revolving in our counties, Madam Speaker. The second calculus, Madam Speaker, that I wanted to emphasize on is this courage. I don't know where the National Assembly gets this courage from. That you can be sent by the people of Kenya from your respective constituency to go and do your role in Parliament. And one of those roles, Madam Speaker, is simply to approve audited reports sent to you by the Auditor General. Simple job. Go, scan through, scrutinize, read, understand what the Auditor General has talked about in the previous year's financial statements about our entire country, and approve or disapprove it. Then, Madam Speaker, the National Assembly of Kenya, the last audited report that they have gotten time to approve is the audited report of the financial year 2020-2021. Now, Madam Speaker, the reason why this is a very important calculus is because under Article 203 of the Constitution, Madam Speaker, the requirement is that equitable share that we must horizontally share between national government and county government is predicated upon the last audited reports considered and approved by National Assembly. Where is justice for devolution? Where is justice for counties and their governments? Where is justice for the people of Kenya if the last audited report that forms the basis of sharing revenue between county government and national government is based on 2021 financial year, Madam Speaker? It is absurd. In fact, I don't know where the courage the majority leader of National Assembly gets to lead a house that sends this kind of division of revenue bill to the Senate of Kenya. And that's what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, without mincing my words. We must fight that the Senate of Kenya must be a proper upper house in Parliament of Kenya, Madam Speaker. Even if it means we're going to sponsor our own bill, the National Assembly must understand the significance of legislation that emanates from a constitutional democracy, where then you must follow the Constitution and do things right. Madam Speaker, this division of revenue bill that constantly is sent to the House of the Senate without paying attention to the requirement of the Constitution, even after this, the High Court pronounced itself that Parliament should consider audited reports within 3 months, we still have 2 years pending without approval. What is the impact of this, Madam Speaker? The impact of this is, this becomes a con game from counties. And I'm using that word very strongly because if you're going to project that you're going to raise money this year of 2.7 trillion, and then you're dividing money for counties based on the financial year 2021, Madam Speaker, 2023, 2022 are not considered, which, if you do the calculus, Madam Speaker, Our revenue is growing, but the county revenue will never grow, commensurate to what the National Assembly is giving to national government. This must be corrected, Madam Speaker, because if it's not corrected, then it means the counties are not getting what the Constitution requires, which is equity. Equity. Equity is the word, Madam Speaker. There is no way you can raise 2.7 billion, adjust it to inflation, and then you give the national government 85% of that money because there is augmented reasoning around ordinary financial, Madam Speaker. We must insist in this House, and I want to wish the majority leader and the majority whip the courage. If they cannot confront their counterparts in the National Assembly by day, they must confront them by night and have this conversation around audited reports. Because, Madam Speaker, if we use the latest audited report, counties should be able to get actually 470 billion from this. 470 billion. If you look at the last audited report, if they were approved as they are from last year. So, Madam Speaker, this is a very pertinent issue that I wanted to stress on. And as I finish, Madam Speaker, I think it is very important that I mention, Madam Speaker, that one of the amendments that cannot miss is the money that goes to the Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker. Because Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker, established under 204, is one of those clauses that is facing a serious sunset. And, Madam Speaker, the monies that are owed for the Equalization Fund, apart from the fact that it will be 20 years gone without being able to make remedy of section paper number 10 of 1965, where counties did not get proper adjustments in terms of the roads, water, and electricity that was envisioned by that particular article, Madam Speaker, there is an agency, Madam Speaker, in terms of making sure that that money works. If, Madam Speaker, you allocated money for these counties to do roads, to do electricity, to give water in 2013, and it was not given, and the national government owes that money to counties up to date, Madam Speaker, what is the value of that money now compared to if it had been released in 2013? Will these Northern Frontier counties, Madam Speaker, that were affected by this session paper, Madam Speaker, ever get their fair share and, again, equitable development that they need to get? I doubt, Madam Speaker, because the value of money keeps on adjusting. And, Madam Speaker, because CRA under Article 116 and 117 has been given the mandate to help restructure conversation around Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker, there are some pockets of communities that equally face some form of marginalization, Madam Speaker. For instance, where I come from, the people of Kuria, if you go to a place like Komosoko Nyamusense, the people of Kuria have faced serious marginalization. If you come to Nyatike, sub-county, the people of Muuru Bay have faced some form of marginalization. The people of Sori have faced some form of marginalization. If you go to Kuria East, in Migori County, Madam Speaker, a place called Masangora has faced some form of marginalization. And in its wisdom, CRA saw that they should be included in this Equalization Fund, Madam Speaker. And I know that up to over 34 counties, including where my good senator from Kakamega comes from, there are some places, Madam Speaker, that people still live in pathetic areas, pathetic lifestyle, without basic human needs: water, roads, electricity. Yet, Madam Speaker, this is becoming a strategic debt, and I'm saying strategic because the national government has constantly secluded this fund and never given to counties, Madam Speaker. So this Equalization Fund must go back to counties, Madam Speaker. I know that my time is much spent, but I want to support that with this report the way it is. We support the report, but look at those amendments.
Senator Karen Nyama. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Division of Revenue Bill is a requirement of Article 218 of the Constitution, and the main operative word for this bill is equity. And its purpose is to divide or allocate funds from the national government between the two levels of government for continuity of services and the programs at both levels. This year, the allocation of revenue has dipped, to the county specifically, has dipped from 10.4% in the